Hey, welcome back to tutorial 5. This tutorial is going to be about creating maps and nesting maps inside of other maps. So you can have something that's very detailed be a submap of another larger map. So I'm going to create a new story to do this in called a New York Murder. I've got some New York maps that I'm going to use. So let's just create. And here we are going into the info screen for our new mystery, our new story. So this is going to be set in New York. New York, place so nice they named it twice. Ha ha ha. Let's put an introduction in there. In a New York minute. Somebody died. Oh dear. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to create a map of Manhattan that will have a nested map of Central Park and City Hall. So I'm going to upload these maps now, and I'll check in with you once I'm done. Okay, here we are. Now I've got my 3 maps uploaded. I have my Manhattan Island map, and I have a zoom-in map of New York City Hall, and then I also have a zoomed-in map of Central Park. Although it doesn't really look like it from this perspective, but if you look at the dimensions of these things, they're pretty large. 2 megs of data there, so that's quite large. But if we did Manhattan Island with the same level of detail as we've got of Central Park, then that would be huge. I mean, this little portion is by itself 2 megs in my zoomed in version, and this whole map itself is 2 megs, so that'd be huge. But, so I'm going to make these all maps, because we're going to use them as maps. Okay, there we go. And then the idea is going to be that this map is going to have a zoom in of this area here, which is Central Park, and then a zoom in of where City Hall is, and I think it's over there. I gotta zoom in here. I apologies to any Manhattanites or Gothamites here. I'm not. I have yet to go to your fine city, but I love it for its maps, and it's wonderful for sort of the complexity of just what it can do. So, okay, so I've got these 3 maps now uploaded, and they're all identified as maps. So let's go create the maps and actually be able to load that up into our world. So we go to World Building. Okay, so we're on the Map Files tab here. And let's start with our Manhattan Island. So this is going to be a city map. Okay, so this is the dialogue for creating new maps. And I should walk you through just a little bit of it up here. We created a quick city map in one of our earlier tutorials, but I mean, I blasted through this. So first thing is the name of your map. So, if I spell anything wrong, I'm going back and fixing it later. But, okay. And then the next thing over here to sort of help you in designing your maps is you can select what type of map you're going to be creating. So the next couple of tutorials are all going to be about these different kinds of maps. So right now we're just going to deal with maps and how maps nest inside each other. And then the next tutorial will be about city maps proper. So you can select your type of map here that you want to create, and you can see a little bit of a write-up about sort of what you can do or ways to sort of make that map come alive. And also there's some things in terms of things you might want to watch out for. So we have the city map, then we have buildings, which can be like an overhead like a floor plan, or it can be like a 3D perspective that could be very effective. Then you can also have a map that is a point of view, and this is where the map is just your particular perspective on a location. So you might click on a door to go, or click on something to search and stuff like that. And then there's what's called a point of view marker map. We won't deal with these too much. We'll get into that a little bit in the point of views when we talk about that there. So there are sort of the 5 styles of map. So if you're dealing with buildings, you'll want one of these 2. If you're dealing with perspective views, you'll want a POV map generally. And if you're building a city like we are for Manhattan, then you'll want a city map. Now, in this case, I am going to click this because that was the source from my map. It was from Google Street Maps. And so if you check one of these, when your map appears in Story Worlds, it'll appropriately give the right credit to either Google Map, or OpenStreet is another great source for getting city maps or world maps. If anyone has anyone else that they might like to suggest as a source of maps, then I can add some more references in here. So we've got our city map, and this is going to be the top map. It's not going to have a parent of anything else. So you'll see when we do Central Park that it will be a parent of this map, but we'll get to that in a second here. So let's select now our Manhattan Island. And there's our map right there. So we are pretty much ready to go. Okay, we'll have to fix that another time. And let's go okay. So there we go. We've got Manhattan Island in there now. And you can see the display over here and quite a lot of the detail for... There's where City Hall is going to be. That's there we are. Found it. Yeah, so now we've created our map with that's going to work as sort of like the parent map of the other 2 maps that we're going to nest inside here. Now let's create our other 2 maps, and then we'll start putting some locations on here. So let's add our new map, and we'll call this Central Park. And it is also going to be a city map. It is also a Google map. And its parent map is going to be Manhattan Island. Now that we are using a parent map, we can do some interesting things here. We can have it be hidden. So you might hide a nested map if, say, you had a crime scene or something where you wanted to really zoom in, and it wasn't in a building, it was outside, like in a park or something like that. But you didn't want to draw attention to it to begin with. So you could hide the map until that crime scene, it becomes important, so you go to that nested map. If you have a dungeon, a nested map which is a dungeon, then that means that you can't leave that map except through a particular exit. This isn't as really applicable for nested maps, but it's great for buildings, and especially underground catacombs or something like that, where you can only get out at certain places. Otherwise, you would be able to navigate from a child map to a parent map, no matter what. And that's what we'll be doing, because anyone can get out of Central Park, right? Unless we're trapped in a John Carpenter movie. But, and then as a nested location, we'll get into that again. That's a better thing for buildings. We'll create a nested location for you in an upcoming tutorial. So the big one for city maps and these kind of maps is just, do you want to hide it or not? Those ones are more typical for buildings. But so let's find our Central Park here. There we go, and I'm going to go OK. All right, and here we've got Central Park. You can see quite the level of detail here for the park itself. And this should fit right inside our Manhattan Island map. Now, I want to draw your attention to something here. You'll see that now Manhattan Island has this little triangle next to it, and that means that there's nested data underneath it. In this case, it's the child map that we just created for Central Park. And one of the things we're going to be doing is we're going to be placing what are the dimensions of this map within its parent map of Manhattan Island. We'll get to that in a little bit. Let's create our other map for City Hall. So I'll add that in. Okay. What's great about these wizards is that it remembers, let's call it City Hall grounds. It remembers what you previously have done, so if you're adding a bunch of Google Maps, it's great just to sort of do them all at once, and it'll remember what the settings were. So, okay, it's going to nest within Manhattan Island, and we will place that on there as well. Okay, so we have 2 child maps now. If you see things that blank out, just refresh it. You'll find that's a little bit of a bug of the grid itself. But now we have 2 child maps that are underneath Manhattan Island. So while we're here, let's talk about some of the other settings on this grid. So again, you can sort by name. You can check to see which maps start out hidden and which don't. We'll get to is a dark map in a little bit. Again, that's better for things like buildings and stuff like that. Is a dungeon map, and then which ones are street map and Google Map, just like we did on the initial wizard. The point of view is something that's used only for point of view maps, and there's 2 settings there. But again, we'll deal with that in a later tutorial. So here's my Manhattan Island. I've got my Central Park, and I've got my City Hall map as well. So if I go back to, whoops, I'm going to reload this. So I'm going to go back to clues, and then I'll go back to world building here. Okay. So now what we want to do is we want to place the dimensions of our 2 child maps within our parent map. So if I click on Manhattan Island, that loads up the main map there. If I load up Central Park, now you can sort of just see at the top here, there's a little indicator up there, and we're going to move that in a second here. I am going to... So for Central Park, we want to place it so that it's... And what you're going to be doing is placing the top corner, the top left corner, and the bottom right corner to specify how the one map overlaps the other. So I'm going to just double-click here, and that's the top corner. And now I'm going to double-click down here. And now, if you can see, what I've done is I've specified that the one map exists within the dimensions of the other map. And if I've done this right, this should overlap almost identically. I mean, it's hard because of the scales of the map can sort of get kind of messed up, and it's never necessarily exact, but it's pretty darn close here. If you find that you want to fiddle around with, because I think this map is just a little bit too low. Let me see if I can. I'm going to move it and then move it over here. Sometimes you got to sort of play around with these a little bit. I think we've got the right height now. Oh, that looks pretty good. That looks not bad. That one's pretty much bang on. I can sort of see the way the paths are overlapping are more or less okay. Okay, so I'm going to go with that for now. We'll be placing locations on this in a second, and then we'll go into Story Worlds and have a look at our new maps. So let me go back down to here. This is where City Hall is. So City Hall grounds. Just the S there. And then let's put City Hall on the map. Okay, so that's it right there. So I'm going to take that corner there, and then that corner about there. Maybe a little bit more. That... this is very hard to tell. That looks not bad. That looks... No, that's no good, because that's overlapping over there. I think that looks pretty good. Let's see here. Okay. I won't fiddle around for that. Again, you can sort of play around with values up here if you want to get it exactly on. I mean, it's just supposed to give you a best guess. Okay, so now we've got our maps. We've got them all nesting inside each other now. And I'm going to create some locations so that we can move around between these different maps. Now, we'll go in more into locations in a little bit. This is more about the maps themselves. But for now, let's just let me create a few here behind the scenes. So I've created a few more locations here. I thought I would show you me going through actually creating a few of them. I cheated a bit because I actually got some images here for the different locations from Wikipedia, all the correct attribution and so on. So I'm just adding, and this is Tweed Courthouse, and I'll just select it over here. There we are. So there we are. I'll just center that. So I've got New York City Hall, Tweed Courthouse, Tavern on the Green, Belvedere Castle, the Alexander Hamilton statue, and then I'm going to add in some locations that are just in Manhattan Island as well. So York Public Library, which, hey, again, I'll adjust that once I get in there. And where's my... There we are. I love that opening scene in Ghostbusters. But, okay, so that's good. And, got it pretty close. Okay. That's it, right? Yeah, Fifth Avenue. There we go. Okay, and then I also have the Empire State Building as well. So, and there we go. Visible location. I'll move it just up a bit. And again, this is only just to place your locations. It's just rough, just so that you're in the right neighborhood, as it were. We'll talk about neighborhoods in a bit here. But okay, so I've got Empire State Building. And so a lot of time has passed since I originally recorded this video, and there were a few bugs that got in the way that were really problematic, but I also wanted to show you a more interesting example, because how I've got City Hall grounds and Central Park, and I also nested a map underneath Central Park itself, because I noticed that on our Central Park map we had a pretty good... We had the building of the Museum of Metropolitan Art, and I thought, well, what if I got a map of the Met and put it on so I could nest another map inside the Central Park map. And so if I click on this, you can see how I've overlaid the Met map right on top of the Central Park map. And then the Central Park map is nested within Manhattan Island. And that, I think that makes for a very interesting example because, and you can even see the Met at the very top level on the Manhattan Island level. So in order to do this, I created some more locations. So there was also a whole bunch of problems I had finding the Empire State Building from New York Public Library. And I created, so on this map of the Met, I've got the Temple of Dender here, and I've also got the Great Hall. And I added some extra pictures in there for all of those locations. So this makes for a very interesting example because you're nesting within, I mean, it's kind of like the inception of maps, right? I mean, you can go within one map and then nest to go inside another map. And I mean, that's kind of how sometimes the world is complicated that way. But I wanted to show you what that looks like within story worlds with this particular example. So let's load up story worlds, and I haven't done anything differently. I've All of the stuff is exactly like I showed you in the previous part of this tutorial. It just, there's more of it. And really the only thing that's changed is that I added one map underneath the Central Park map. So there's three now: Manhattan Island to Central Park, and then Central Park to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Okay, let's load this up in StoryStylus and Story Worlds and see how this all plays out. And one more thing before we go into Story Worlds, make sure that you adjust your starting location to be something at one of the world locations. I'm going to set it to be the New York Public Library. So at least you have a starting location for when you start your game. So let's give that a look now. And here we are in Story Worlds looking at our New York murder. So now let's play the story. I haven't defined any avatars, so I'll just pick my default ones here. And let's go in and look at our nested world. Okay, here we are. Someone has died in a New York minute, haha. And I go to the story. So I'm starting at the New York Public Library. There we are. And there's some of the artwork that's appearing. You can see I've also got Grand Central Station here, and the United Nations, and Empire State Building correctly placed. And now, if I scroll up here, you can see I put Columbus Circle near to, and then there's our nested map for Central Park. And if I go down here, then you'll be able to see the nested map for the City Hall grounds. So let's first go into our City Hall. So we click on that. It centers nicely, and you can see the two nested locations there for City Hall and the Tweed Courthouse. And if we happen to be in a map and we want to get out, so we go back to the parent map. Okay, so let's go to, so now when we check out Central Park, I mean, we've got a fair degree of detail here, right? You can see. But when I go into this nested map, there's a lot more detail. You can see all of the paths here in the park. You can see Alexander Hamilton statue and Belvedere Castle. And we got Tavern on the Green down here somewhere. Yep. And I can also go into, there's the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and I can go into that. And there's the Great Hall, and there's the Temple of Dender. So I'm going to go back to the parent map. I'm going to move, double click to go to the Alexander Hamilton statue. And you can see I can just move around here just as I would. I can go back to the parent map. And what's interesting, you'll see that because I've perfectly lined up Central Park with my parent map with the map of Manhattan Island, you can see where Belvedere Castle is on the parent map, on the map of Manhattan Island. So if I go into this now, you can see that the Belvedere Castle is right on the lake, which is where it is. And you can see that I even have my location on the parent map, even though I'm really nested within this child map here. And we can do that even for the Metropolitan Museum of Art. So if I then go to this map and I visit the Great Hall, now watch what happens when I go to the parent map here. So you can see the Great Hall. I'm there in the first room but I'm looking at the Central Park map. And if I zoom out again, you can see that it's very fine there, but you can see that that push pin points to that first hall, the Great Hall within the Metropolitan Museum of Art. So that's why you want to nest the geometries of the one map within the other, so that you can generally get a sense of where you are within a parent map looking into a child map. So, but you can move around just like before. And if I go back over to the Tweed Courthouse here, and then I go back to the parent map, then yeah, you can see that I'm just on the northern part of the City Hall grounds there. So that's really showing how you can, like Russian nesting dolls, fit everything together, or Inception style of making your map worlds come alive and bringing a whole lot of detail to your look. And I can't go out to the parent map there, so that's good. And I can still go into my locations directory and browse around and see all of my locations and even zoom in on the different maps. So that's just sort of showing you how you can bring your locations alive and really put a lot of detail into building your worlds. So in the next tutorial, what I'm going to do is show you how you can identify these locations by types, so you can categorize them all. And then we'll also get into creating neighborhoods for your cities to really bring them to life. And that'll be in tutorial 6. See you then.